Here in this video, we are going to see how we can develop a CRUD application, create, read, update, delete application in Angular. And we are going to use Firebase as the backend for storing information. Here I'm going to develop the application using Visual Studio Code Editor. I have already opened that. The other prerequisites are we need to install Node.js. Go to nodejs.org website and download Node.js. After installing Node.js, we need to install Typescript. That is a programming language used by Angular. That is a typed superset of JavaScript language. So here you can see the command to install Typescript. Open a command prompt and execute this particular command after installing Node.js. The next thing is we need to install Angular CLI. This is actually a command line interface for Angular, using which we can execute many Angular tasks like creating a new application, generating different components of the application. We can test the application. We can do many such operations using command line interface provided by Angular. We need to execute this particular command once in your computer from your command prompt. Now we are going to create a Angular application. Angular command line interface provide this particular command to create an Angular project. Angular project folder structure can be manually created. That takes a lot of effort. So command line interface provides an option to create the folder structure and require dependencies for Angular in a single command. So we can copy this particular command, open a terminal, or you can open a command prompt, create a directory. I'm naming it as Angular ANG Pro. This is an optional step. This is to keep our project in a specific folder. Okay. Go to that particular folder, cd ANG Pro. In Windows also, you can type this. So if you're in Windows, you can type dir. You can see the directory, but I am using Mac operating system. So we need to use Mac and Linux. We have to use present working directory pwd. I am inside this particular folder right now. Okay. So I have created a folder named ANG Pro here in this particular path. So you need to check if you're using Windows, you need to use this particular command to see where you are, in which directory you are at present. Okay. Now execute a command ng new. This is the command provided by Angular CLI to create a project. I'm providing the name as address app. The CLI is asking, would you like to add Angular routing? Yes, because if you are going to use multiple page navigations, we need routing. What is the style sheet format we would like to use? I'm going to use CSS. So simply press enter. There are other style sheet options, but I'm going with CSS. Now Angular is creating the folder structure and downloading the required dependencies to this particular address app folder. So project got created successfully. So we have to go to this particular directory. Okay. So I'm going to that particular path, file, open. I'm opening ANG Pro address app. So open that. Here we can see the folder structure created by Angular CLI for this Angular project. Angular is a Node.js application. So here we can see package.json. Inside the package.json, we can see the different Angular scripts and the dependencies required for developing Angular application. Here in the node modules, we can see a lot of folders. Here in this node module, node installs all these dependencies. And this is the source folder. Here we can see an index.html. Angular is a single page application development framework. That means it has only one page, all other navigation happening from that page only. So let's see how to run an Angular application. For doing that, open the terminal, ng serve. Now all the Angular files are getting compiled. Angular uses Typescript that has to be compiled and transpiled, then only it can be executed inside a browser. Okay, that is actually happening here. So now we can see Angular development server is listening on localhost, this particular port number. We are going to open that particular path, localhost 4200. So we can see a page like this. This is a default page provided by Angular. So if you open this particular HTML, index.html, we can see this particular app root. I'm just deleting that. I'm saying hello world. Saving the file. Now you can see the page got refreshed and we are seeing hello world. I'm reverting this particular change. I am keeping this particular app-root. What is actually this app-root? If you look at this particular folder, in our src app folder, you can see a app component.ts. So this is actually a TypeScript file. If you are familiar with Java, C# and all, it is easy for you to understand TypeScript. Here we are creating a class and class has a title. Title has this particular value. And here we have a decorator. And this is actually a decorator created in the TypeScript language. TypeScript provide a concept called decorator, and Angular has created many decorator for its purpose. And here we are importing the decorator named component, and that decorator has three properties. One is selector, that is app root, and what is the HTML file for this particular selector, and what is the style sheet for this particular selector, and what is the TypeScript program. Okay, so in Angular we create a lot of components like this and wire those components to create an application. This particular app root selector we can see here in the index.html. Now go to this particular component.html, a lot of content. So we don't want this particular content. So I'm saving this file and see, saving and just see what is actually, this is the content, right? So I'm going to delete this particular HTML and save it. And coming back here, we see a blank page because we have deleted all the HTML content. Here we can write our own content. I need a header portion and a main section and a footer section. So I'm going to create 3 div and I'm providing class equal to header. And I'm copying this. Here I'm providing it as main, and here I'm creating it as footer. Save it. And here I'm just providing some dummy text for the time being, header, main, and footer, and save the file and come back here. We can see header, main, footer. Here we can see header, main, footer. Now I have provided a class here, so I can provide some style for this particular header section. Here I'm opening the CSS file of this particular component. And here I'm providing header, background color. I'm providing it as dark gray, dot main, background color, and footer, background color. Okay. Now saving it, and if you look at, now we got 3 different div sections, one for header, one for main, one for footer. For header section, we need to have an Angular component, and footer, we need to have an Angular component, and a main section, we need to have an Angular component. That component has, each and every component has a TypeScript, a view, and corresponding style. Okay. Now here we have simply provided a header text, right? So instead of that, I'm going to create an Angular component. Open the terminal, ng generate component, name of the component. I'm providing some name, whatever name I like, maybe head. We can provide any name we like. It has created 3 files. It has created 4 files. One is the style sheet, an HTML file, and a TypeScript, and a testing file or a spec file for the TypeScript. This spec TypeScript file is to unit test the actual TypeScript component file. Now click on this. We can see a folder here, head. Okay. So I'm going to create a couple of more component. One for, instead of generate component, in short, we can see G space C. I'm creating main. Here we can see 4 files got created and a folder named main. And I'm going to create one more component called footer. So we have created 3 components. So open this particular header component. Opening this particular head component. Here we can see the selector name as by default is app header. And this is the HTML file. It has a content head works, and it has a empty style sheet, and it has a testing file. So here I'm going to, here we have a app header, that is a selector that is provided in this particular decorator, and main has this particular decorator name as app main. We can change it. You may change it if you like. And footer has app-footer. Now I am going to use this particular component in our app component. Instead of header, I'm deleting this. I'm providing app header. I think I have provided app head. Okay. So it is app head and main I'm deleting that and I'm providing app hyphen main and app hyphen footer. Save it. And we need to start the server again. ng serve. So I'm getting port is already in use. I'm not sure I have closed the application properly sometime back before creating the component. We can do one thing for the time being. We can use an option called ng serve hyphen port, some other port number 4000 to 300. I'm providing some other port. Now you see, now we got head works, main works, and footer works. The next thing what we are going to do is we are going to provide some hyperlinks like home, about, address book. What are the links which we need in our application? I'm opening the head component, open the HTML. Now we have this header works, right? So this one need to be changed. So here we have a TypeScript file. In this particular TypeScript file, here I'm providing an attribute named links equal to home. Save it. If I want to get that particular information here, we can provide this particular notation of Angular. This is called as interpolation. Here we can provide links. Here you can provide the attribute which we have created there, that is links. Save it. So once you save, Angular automatically restart the development HTTP server. And here we can see home. I want multiple links. So I need array of links. So I'm going to change this to array. And here I'm providing home, address, book, and about. Save it. So here we have an array of values that we need to iterate here. So what we can do, I'm deleting this. I'm providing a UILI list. And here I'm going to iterate the array. Before iterating the array, I'm just printing that array, links array. Save it. Now we got like this: home, address, book, about, right? Now I want to display this as a link. So I'm going to make things formatted better. I want to iterate this particular link. So we can use a directory called ng for. We can use ng for. I haven't typed this particular syntax fully. Here we can provide, here you can add a couple of extension in VSCode. Click on these extensions and provide Angular. I have installed few extensions. I have installed Angular language service and Angular version 9 snippet by John Papa and Angular essentials. So that will help us to code things quicker. Here we need to, instead of list, we need to make it as links. And here in this item, we'll get each and every item in the array that I'm going to put here. Save it. Now we got this home, address, book, about, right? The next thing is that I want to make it as a link. To make it as a link, we have to provide anchor tag, and I'm copying this one and putting inside. And here I'm providing href equal to, simply providing, for the time being I'm putting hash, we'll later will change it. Now save it. Now we got a link, right? Now I want to remove this particular bullet points. Okay. To remove the bullet points, what we can do, we can take the style of this particular HTML, and here I'm providing list style type. By default it is circle. I'm providing it is none. Save it. So that particular bullet got removed. Then I want to display these items in a line. For that, what we can do is that there is a display property of UL. I'm saying display inline block. So it is inline block. Now next task is that when we click on this particular link, we need to display respective content here in this main section. When I click home, I need to get home content, home page content. When I click on this one, address, book content, and when I click about content should be displayed. Okay. For doing that, we need to use Angular routers. Open this particular app routing module.ts. This particular file get created if we have opted for routing while creating the project. We have given yes as the value to that particular option. So we have got this particular file. We can execute this particular command to create the routing file. If we haven't opted for routing while creating the project, we have this particular file already here. So no need to execute that particular command. Here in this particular routes array, we need to provide path. And here we need to provide something like home. And what is the component? So for home, I want to get a home component. So what we need, so we don't have a home component, right? So what we can do, we can create 3 components, one for home and another for address book, another for about. That has to be displayed inside the main component. So I'm going to create 3 more components. Control C. Here I'm creating component named home. Another component address. Another component is about. So we have created 3 components. That component has to be specified here. So when user click on home link, application/home, the home component should be displayed. Home component. We have created 3 components, but where is the 3 component? We have home component here, about and address, right? So import from /home/home component. From that particular file, we need to provide home component. So that component has to be specified here. And so similarly, I have to provide path for address and about. So here from instead of home, this address/address component. From that, we are taking address component, and from about component. So we have imported the component, and this particular component has to be mentioned here. Path about component, address component. So we have to provide a comma here. Now we have defined the routes of the application, and now we need to define this particular path. I'm going to create this as a JSON object. Okay. So that JSON object should contains a link property. Its value is home. There is a text property, and that text property is home, and that is one of the link. Another link is, I'm just copying this one. I'm doing the same thing. Just copy this address, comma txt equal to value. The next object, close this, right? And we need to close here. So instead of a simple, now we have created an array of objects. So this object has to be iterated. So I'm saving this, and this particular link I am iterating. So item dot text will provide the text content, and item dot link, copy this and here paste it. Item dot link will provide the link we provided there in the data here. Now we have hard coded this particular link. If you need, we can get this particular information from a backend web service. Now save it. When I click on this one, so we are getting that particular link, right? About address, home. When I click on about, nothing is happening, right? I think something wrong with that. I think there is a spelling mistake I'm seeing there about. Let's see. About. Basically, there is no routers. Actually, here I have used the spelling as about. This is a spelling mistake. About, ABOU. Okay. Now save it. And we need to have a corresponding thing here in the router. Let's see what is the router configuration. We have about, right? So things should work. Now when I click on about, but we are not getting the content here. We'll fix it. Address, the link is address. Click on home, address is home here, right? In the URL. Okay. Now when I click on home, I need to display home content here, right? So what we need for that? For that, we need to provide a special tag called router outlet. So open the main. So inside the main, I want to display the contents. So open the main. Main has this particular HTML. So I'm just deleting this. I'm providing a special tag called router outlet. Okay. Now save it. Now when we click on home, we get home works. Click on address, we got. Click on address, we got address work. Click on about works. Click on home, we got home works. Okay, so we got that content. Okay, now we need to change this particular HTML file, corresponding HTML files. So I hope you got how this routing works in Angular. For that, there is a component called routing module. There we can define the routes. Router module has to be configured in the app module.ts. App module, here we can see the imports, browser module, app routing module. Okay, so if you need routing with this particular module should be provided in the import of this ng module decorator provided in the app module class. By default, an Angular application has a module named app module. There, this particular ng module decorator is there. There we can see the declarations. Declarations means all the components which we have created is there in the declarations. And imports, the modules which we need have to be provided here. And in the providers, we have to provide the, generally we provide service classes, something that can be injectable, if we provide in the providers. And the bootstrap is the app component. Actually, our bootstrap component is the app component. App component has this particular HTML. This HTML has this particular header, footer, and main. And in our header, we have provided the links. And when click on the links in the header section, in the main, inside the main, we have this particular app component.html. There we have provide the router outlet. So where we provide the router outlet, there router will display the content of the component. That means when user click on home, the home page content get displayed here in this particular main component. When user click on address, address component content get displayed in this particular section. Okay, where we provide this particular tag is very important. Now we got some idea about how the component and how router works. Now we are going to focus on the forms. Click on this particular address book. I want to display a form for entering the data. For that, we are going to create. For that, we have to open address component. Here I'm creating a form. Form contains input, type is equal to text, name equal to, I'm providing name and placeholder, first name, copy this, first name, last name. Now email, email address, so here we can provide it as type as email, and I'm providing next is phone number. I'm saving this. So when I click on home, this one, when I click on address, I'm getting this particular form, right? Form has these fields, but it is not, it's coming up in a single line, right? So we can make it better aligned. So I'm going to create a div. And so I'm going to put all these elements inside a div. Cutting it. So div is actually a block tag. So the content will come to the next line, and we can provide the styling for each and every div. That is the reason why I'm providing it in a div. Okay, save it. Now we got it right in a. So we can provide spacing and all for this particular div. So go to the style sheet. I'm creating a form line, and margin 20 pixel, adding, save it. So we need to provide this particular thing here in each and every class. Copy this. Save it. Now let's see what's happening. Nothing happened. Sorry, we need to remove this dot. Save it. Oh, this much. Open the CSS. Just make it as margin 10 and to make the code simple for the time being, I'm just doing a simple styling. We can do Angular material view, or we can use Bootstrap, some libraries to make things beautiful. So for the time being, I'm making a simple form. We can focus more on functionality. Now I need a submit button, right? Copying this. Input type is equal to submit. Value equal to save. Okay. Now we got this particular form. And when user enters some data in this particular field and click on save, I need to store this particular data in the database. We are going to use Firebase as the backend application to keep the data which we are typing here. To save that, we have to do many steps. First of all, we need to pass this information to our address book component. Here we have a view. From this particular view, we need to pass this data to the underlying component. Open that particular address component. So what is the structure of the data? So the structure of the data is, the data has first name, last name, email, and phone. So I'm creating a class ng generate class. I'm creating address. I'm creating a model named address. So you can see a address class created. Where is it? Address. So here I'm providing first name equal to first name string, last name string. You can provide camel casing, that is better. Then email that is also string, and font. Save it. Next, in this particular address component, I'm providing a name equal to, I'm providing it as Vijesh. Okay. Here I'm simply do like this way. It's actually called as interpolation name. So save it. So I have to save multiple files. So here we can see Vijesh got printed. Okay. So I'm going to print that here inside this particular form. So what we can do for that, instead of doing here value, I'm providing name. So we got that value here, right? So it's actually one-way data binding. Okay. So whenever that is actually we are getting the data from the component to the HTML view, but what we need is a two-way data binding. For doing two-way data binding, we need to use ng model directive in the form. So first of all, what we need is that if you are using form, we need to add form module. Open the app module.ts. Here, what we need is import Angular / forms form module. Angular has two type of forms. One is template driven form and another is reactive forms. If we have complex forms, we have to use reactive forms. I'm using simple template driven forms here in our use case. So this particular form module has to be mentioned here in this imports. Save it. Now, next open this address component.html, provide ng model, and here we need to use this particular notation for two-way data binding equal to name. Now save it. What we are getting here, we got Vijesh, and here I'm printing this particular thing outside. Here I'm printing this value. Save it. When I make change in the text box, this particular component property is getting updated. When the component property get updated, this particular content get updated in the view. Okay, that is actually called as two-way data binding. Okay, when models changes, view get updated. When content in the view get changed, model get updated. Okay, so I hope you got the concept of this two-way data binding. Now we have done a simple property called name, right? So instead of that, we have created an address class. I want to do two-way data binding with that particular address class object. For doing that, instead of name, I'm changing this to form data. Equal to new address. So we are creating an object of address, and here we are going to bind this particular form data object to this particular property. So here I'm going to use, I'm just deleting this. Okay, for the time being, I'm keeping it. So okay, form data dot first name, and here we need to mention same thing. Form data dot first name, and this one for the time being I'm keeping it. I will delete this particular portion just for testing purpose. I'm keeping it there. Whenever I make some change, the component object get updated and that content is getting displayed here. Okay, we have to do this for the other properties. Value equal to and we have to do two-way data binding. For two-way data binding, we need to use this notation ng model equal to the value last name property we are binding. Okay, so we can delete this thing. So this is not needed for testing purpose. I just put that, and I'm just copying this content and pasting it for other two. Here we have to mention from, I think, email and email and the phone number. I think phone. Now save it. Next, when we type something in this particular text box, when we click save, we need to save this particular data. Already when we type something here, that get updated in the component property, right? So when we type something here, that get updated in the this particular object. This particular object has address, first name, last name, those properties get updated. We have already binded this particular object to the forms fields. Now I want to do a submit. When click on this particular save, I want to submit the form. We can do different way. I'm going to do a common approach. Here we have a submit button. Here we have a submit button, right? So what is actually happening here? We have, we can do a ng submit event. We can call ng submit function. Since we have a submit button here, I'm providing this ng submit form submit. On submit form submit, this particular function get called. I'm going to create a function called save data. I'm going to create this particular function in our component class. Save data console.log saving data console.log this dot form data. Just want to see what data we are trying to save. Okay, I'm just logging that. Now I hope that I have saved everything. Now I have to save some files. Now I'm typing something. Vijish, last name TP, email address, phone number. I'm providing something, and when I click on save, let's see. Before doing that, right click and inspect and go to the console view. Click on save. See, saving data, and this is the data which we are going to save. It has all the information: first name, last name, email address is there, phone number is there. Okay, everything is coming correctly. Okay, so we can save this particular data to Firebase or whatever the backend system we like. Okay, for doing this save, update, delete operations with Firebase, I'm creating a service component. For doing that, I don't want to write that particular logic here. Okay, so I'm going to create a class ng generate service class. Service class is a type of class that we can inject in other component. It is a shared class for all other component. We can inject that particular components in multiple places. Okay, so I am going to create address service. Okay, so here we are going to create a service class address.service. Here we can see address service decorated with injectable. If anything annotated with or decorated with injectable can be injected in other components, I'm going to inject this particular component in our address component. One more thing is that if you create a something injectable service here, that we can see here, we can add that in the providers. Address service. Next, we are going to inject that in our address component. Here in the constructor, I am providing private address service. Basically, in the constructor, we can do like this for injecting other injectable components. So in the address service, I'm going to create a function called save address. It is expecting providing type as address, sorry, not cluster.address. Okay, so because we are expecting an address object as the argument having this particular properties, right? And we have this particular information there in our form data, right? So what we can do, this particular form data can be passed to address service dot save address, pass this form data. Now save it. That step is over. Now next we need to, so when once users submit the form, we get the data here, and we have passed this particular data to the address service. Address service get this particular data, and that has to, this particular function has to save that address data to Firebase or whatever the backend system, whether it can be a Java application, it can be a Node.js, it can be a .NET, or it can be any backend application. So I'm going to use Firebase Firestore for storing this data. For that, we need to do few steps. For the time being, just this print console.log. Just print console.log whether we are getting the data here in this particular place or not. From service class console.log console.log address. Save it. Start the server. ng-serve. Still I have this particular port locked, so I'm starting in a different port. I haven't done the form validation and all. We'll do that later. Okay, save it. Yes, we are getting this particular message from service, and service also got this particular data to be saved. Okay, so in the service class, we'll write the logic for saving, deleting, updating data with Firebase. Next, we will see how to save data to Firebase. Open your sign in with your email address. Click on get started. Create a project. Enter your project name. I'm providing some name. Accept. Continue. So enable Google Analytics for this project. Okay. Continue. Create project. Continue. Getting started by adding a Firebase to your application. So there are different options. So whether you want to use Firebase as a backend for your iOS or Android or a web application, we are going to web application. So click on web and register app. So I'm providing is address website. I'm not going to host for the time being. I'm not taking this. We can host our application to Firebase also. I'll be doing a separate tutorial for that. Hosting our application to Firebase. Register app. Now we get a Firebase configuration information for our project. Copy this particular configuration. Copy this particular configuration, and we need to use this particular configuration in our Angular project to connect with Firebase. So that configuration information can be placed inside environments. There is a TypeScript file environments.ts. Here we have a constant. I'm just pasting that content copied from Firebase. So instead of equal, I'm providing it as colon, and the semicolon is optional. So here we have a Firebase configuration information. Next, we need to install a couple of Firebase modules in this particular project. Control C. Next, we need to install npm install --save Firebase. We need to install Firebase libraries or modules to our Angular project. So we have installed that. Next, we need to install Angular/fire. Okay, we have now installed the required dependencies. Next, we need to open app module, and here we need to import the Firebase modules. Import from at Angular/fire Angular fire module, and copy this module here. Next, import from Angular at Angular/fire/database Angular database fire database module. Copy this, and this module also need to be provided here in the imports. So all the modules should goes to the import sections, and here we need to do a simple configuration dot initialize the app with the configuration from environment properties environment.ts. Here we have this particular configuration, so we need to import this particular file there. So app module import from environment. I'm just copying environment, importing the environment, and this environment has dot Firebase config. initialization. Firebase module has to be initialized with the configuration which we got from the Firebase. So we have done that particular configuration. Now save it. The next task is we have to call the Firebase API. Here in this particular configuration, we have the database URL. We are going to connect to this particular database. So go to our service class. There we have to write the logic for sending or saving data to Firebase. Open the address service. And here what we need. Next, we have to write logic here in this particular section to store data in the Firebase. For that, we need to import /Firestore. We need to import Angular Firestore. This Angular Firestore has to be injected private Firestore, Angular Firestore, and we can use this Firestore dot collection. Planning to create a collection named address. There, to that particular collection, I want to add our address object. So this has to be, save this and run the application ng serve. Click on our address book and provide some data. Save it. Let's check this particular data has been saved in our Firestore or not. Click on this project overview. Click on develop, database, create a database. Click on next, where we want to store our database. Select the region which you like. I'm going with the default. Done. Firebase is provisioning database for us. And here we need to create a collection. Okay. Now we have created the cloud file store. Earlier we haven't enabled and we tried to save it. That was the problem. Okay. Now I'm going to save this particular thing again. So now we got an error, missing or insufficient permission. Click on rules. Here we need to provide, instead of false, we need to provide it as true. Then only we'll be able to save it. Publish. Now publish the changes. Now try to hit from our Angular application. I'm just clearing it and save it again. I think we are not getting any error right now. Let's check the data got saved or not. So data in the collection. I think this is the collection which it has created. Okay. So it has created a new collection and it created one document inside the collection. So this is one record. Okay. Now I'm going to create one more record and see one more data. I'm going to make it as Peter. I'm providing something. Okay. Save it. Go to our Firebase. We should see one more document created. Yes. So our save functionality is working fine. Now we have saved a couple of documents in this particular collection. Now let's see how we can retrieve this particular collection and display these document details in Angular component. For doing that, in our address service, I'm going to create one more method. Already we have created a method for saving. We are going to create one more function here. Create address, this dot firestore dot collection and dot snapshot changes. It will provide the current state of the collection. So this is actually providing an observable. Okay, so we can subscribe to this particular observable in our component class. So that is the reactive style of programming. So we can subscribe to this particular observable in our component class, that is this particular address component. In the ng on init function, we can subscribe to address service dot, we have to provide this dot this dot address service dot read address. So this actually providing us an observable, so we can subscribe to that particular observable. In this particular subscribe, we register a callback function. So once data is available, this particular function get called. That's a kind of reactive style of programming. This particular subscribe is not part of JavaScript. Actually, it is part of RxJS. That is the library Angular heavily used for reactive style of programming. Here I'm simply doing console.log. I'm going to save it. Now, ng sir. So here we can see data received contains two data. From this particular data, we need to extract the information which we need. For that, here I'm creating a array of address to store the values which we are getting from Firebase. To this particular address array, I want to get each and every address available in this particular data. We need to iterate this particular data dot map function, JavaScript map function. Each and every object in this particular data. So we get multiple document objects in this particular data. So I'm just providing a transformation function here. This particular map function is returning an object having ID. We get the ID from this particular document dot payload dot doc dot ID. That is the ID of this particular object, comma, and doc dot data as, and we copy that to this particular object. So I think this particular comma is not needed. And this particular map function, whatever the data is retaining, I'm going to assign that particular data to this particular address array we created. I'm just naming it as addresses, and to assigning to this dot addresses equal to So here we are getting an error. The ID string is not assignable to address array. Type ID is missing the following property from the address. Here we can provide as address. So what we are getting here now. Okay, the thing is that this particular object which we are returning has an ID, but that particular ID field is not available there in this particular address. So I'm going to create an ID property also here in our address model class. ID is a string and save it. Now come back to our component class. Is there any error? I think no errors right now. Okay. So we have iterated the data and converted that to a array of addresses. I'm just changing it to document so we can use this to doc is coming here, right? Just changing to document. So we are iterating each and every document, creating an address object, and here we have an address array. So this address array contains all the data available in the Firebase Firestore. Now we need to display this particular data in the HTML. For that, I'm creating a div here in the HTML page. And creating a table and creating a table row, and inside table row I'm iterating the array using ng for loop, and here I'm providing addresses, that is the array which we have created, and it has some address, some object. We can provide any variable name you like. Okay, I'm providing it as address, and inside this particular table I'm creating some td, and here inside the td address dot id, you can see the id. I'm copying this address dot first name, address dot last name, address dot email, and I need to copy one more for the phone number, and save it. See, here we can see the ID of the document, and this is the content, and this is the first name, last name, email, content, phone number, content. Okay, we can provide some heading for this particular table. Yeah, h id, copying this. This is first name, email, font, providing a simple border for this particular table, border one. I'm saving one more address information. Save it. See, we are getting that information here. We should see this particular information in the Firestore as well. Yes, we have it, got it. I think this is. I think this is the one which we just created. Okay. So our get is also working fine. Now, how do we edit a particular record? And that means how I select a particular record or a particular document editing a particular existing address information. For doing that, we can provide one more link here. For a button, we can provide. I'm providing a button. So here we have provided a button, and here I'm providing edit. When I click edit, what we need, let's save it. When I click edit, this particular information should be loaded in the text box. And when I click on edit this one, this particular data should be loaded in this particular text box. A simple approach to do that is I'm providing a function call here. Click. I'm calling edit. I'm providing this particular address object. So this edit function is not there. So I'm just copying this. I'm naming this edit data, whatever function name we like, and copying this. I'm going to create a function in the address component class. Edit data. Here we are expecting an address. Here we have a form data. But when we click on edit, what I'm going to do is this particular form data object get changed to whatever the address object we pass in the edit. That means here in the edit, if there are 10 address object, each and every row has its own address object. So when we click on edit, Angular pass the respective address object to this particular edit function. So we can get that particular address and set that address to this particular form data. So I'm going to change the form data. This dot form data equal to address. Click this particular edit. This particular data should be loaded. Let's see whether it is happening or not. Edit. Yes, that particular data is getting loaded. When I click on this particular edit, that particular data getting loaded. So that part is okay, but we have to save this particular data, right? When I click on this particular save, we need to differentiate it is a new data or an existing update, right? A simple approach to do that is while click on save, what is actually happening? What we are doing? We are submitting the form, right? Okay. So we are calling this save data function. In the save data function, what we are doing? We are simply calling address service dot save address this form data. Okay. What is this form data? Form data contains this particular address. So while creating a new address, there won't be any ID. ID will be null, right? Because only when we save to the Firebase, we get an ID for a document. That is this thing. These are the ID of the document. So based on that particular check, we can differentiate it's a save or update. So I'm going to write the logic here. If form data, that is an address object, dot ID equal to null, it is a this dot, you're getting an error, right? So I haven't provided this dot form data. Okay, form data this dot form data dot id equal to null. That means it is a new record. Okay. In the case of edit, the form data should contain a value for this particular id. That means in the case of edit, this particular data is assigned to the form data, right? So that form data object should contain this particular id, or if we click on this one, this will be the id, right? So in the case of edit, some id will be there, but in the case of save new record we are saving, in that case there won't be any id. Okay. So now spell else this dot address service dot, we need to write a function to update the data. So address service, I'm creating another function, update address. What we are getting here, I'm getting a, we have to get an address here. And this dot firestore dot doc. So here we need to provide, sorry, the collection slash document id. Document id is this particular address dot id dot, there is a method, I think update, yes, this one update, and here we need to pass create an copying this particular address data expected address component address service dot update address, pass this particular form data. Form data contains whatever the information which we have edited, but it contains an id, right? So that we are passing to this particular function. Now save it. Any error, I think compiled successfully. Application, now test the application. Click any of the edit. I'm changing the phone number of Peter to 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 and saving it. Before saving it, we can just verify. Here we have Peter. The phone number is this name, and I'm going to save now. I think we got an error. No document to update. I have provided incorrect spelling here. So copy this and put this. Okay, save it. Try this again. Changing the phone number to this value. Save it. Yes, we could see when we change here, immediately reflected here, and here also we can see the change. So update is working. Now let's try to create a new one. How do we create a new one, right? After updation, we can do one thing. We can just clear this particular text boxes. So for doing that, after save or update, what I'm going to do is this dot form data equal to new address. That means an empty object. Here we are creating a new empty object for the form data. So once after save or update, the form data will be a fresh object. So let's try. I'm just editing the phone number of Vijay to something different. Save it. That's got updated. And now I'm going to type something here, providing some email address and phone number, providing something, and click on save. Yes, it created a new one. And if you want to change, Sita email and change to Sita, save it. So our save and update is working fine. Now, how do we delete a particular record? I don't want a particular record, so we can delete that particular record. So to do that, I am providing one more button here. I'm copying and pasting this, and here I'm making delete, and here click on delete. Here I'm providing a function name as delete data, and we are passing the address. And copy this and go to this address component and create a function. Here's the function name. It is expecting an address object. Just copying this, pasting here, and here we need to call a delete service in the address service. Going to address service and creating a function delete address. So here I am getting the address object. This dot firestore dot copy the same thing we have done for update, paste it here and dot delete. This particular document ID get deleted from the Firestore. Save it. We have to use this particular function in our address component. This dot address service dot delete address, pass the address object. Now save it. Just some spaces here, just cleaning it up. Now save all. Go to now test this particular delete is working or not. I want to delete this particular record. Click on delete. Yes, it got deleted. Go to the yes. Here also we have only 3 right now in the Firestore. Delete the other 2. Yes, everything got deleted, and go to the Firestore and see in this particular collection we don't have any record. Just create one provide some phone number, save it. It's coming here, and here also we can see that particular record. And if you want to edit, change the phone number to something different, click on save, and come here, and we can see that change. And if we delete, record will be deleted. Now we have implemented the create, read, update, delete functionality using AngularJS. I hope you got some idea about how to do create, update, delete operation using AngularJS with Firebase. If you find this particular tutorial useful, please subscribe this channel and share with your friends and colleagues. Thank you for watching this.